Welcome to the Hunt Backcountry podcast. This is episode number 496, and as part of the Experience Project, we are recapping our recent Alaska mountain goat hunt. Jake and myself were up in Alaska with our good friend and guide, Mark Rowenhorst of Limitless Alaska Guiding, and also Justin Nelson, who has been on all three Alaska hunts this fall that are part of the Experience Project to hunt himself, but also do some filming. On this mountain goat hunt, it was just Jake and I with goat tags, and spoiler alert, we were successful. It was an amazing adventure, killed two good billies, had adversity and fun and laughs and lessons learned and pushing past some of our comfort zone and limits. And it was just a fantastic trip. And just super excited to share more of that with you today. Like the other podcasts we've done from the field as part of the Experience Project, there is a video version of this podcast. And the video for this one is not just us sitting around and telling the story. You will actually see some footage from the hunt. And so go over to YouTube. There'll be a link in the show description and check out the video version of this conversation if you actually want to see some of what we are discussing. And of course, stay tuned because all three of these Alaska hunts were filmed. We'll have that coming as well as other gear debriefs, lessons learned, and more. Stay tuned to everything the Experience Project by just signing up to receive our emails. Just go to exomountgear.com/newsletter to make sure you don't miss any of that. And speaking of email, if you have any questions for us, whether it's about this mountain goat hunt or something else, just send those to podcast@exomountgear.com and we can include those in future Q&A episodes. Thanks guys for tuning in. Here is today's conversation, or again, go check out the YouTube link in the show description to actually see this conversation. Let's start with you, Jake. I know we've told a little bit of the story. We did a pre-hunt podcast separately from now, but what were your expectations going into this?
Man, there was a lot. I was expecting it to be a hard hunt. I was expecting to have a good time. And honestly, I wanted to be able to kill a mountain goat and do it with these three great dudes.
What was your, as soon as Steve asked you, hey, do you want to do this? Instantly, was it excitement, fear? What were you feeling?
So, for those who don't know, so Steve came up to me. I don't even know if he kind of knows how this whole deal went down, but Steve came up to me and asked, are you still afraid of heights? Yeah? Okay. And he leaves, walks out of my office, and I was like, wow, that was weird. And he came back in and he's like, this work's busy. I don't know if I'll be able to swing the Alaska hunt. I'm thinking about sending you on the goat hunt. And I just remember pausing for maybe half a second. And I was like, yeah. And he smiles and he's like, okay, cool. So that was Labor Day weekend. And so I called you, Mark.
Yeah.
Hey, I think I'm going on this. And you were super excited. That's awesome. And we were just kind of chit-chatting about gear, prep. And so I just kind of was like, I don't know if I'm going or not, just because it was still uncertain. So I was getting ready to I just knew, all right, better start training. Because if he's going to put me in, hey, 2 weeks notice, you're going on that hunt, I should probably be ready. And so then a week went by and he's like, or no, it was 2 weeks, I think. And he's like, hey, yeah, you're going on that hunt. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Glad I started training. But yeah, man, I was gung-ho, ready to go when he told me, you're going on that hunt. I was, getting ready to go on a difficult hunt. And yeah, I really didn't know what to expect though. Watch that hunt, that video you guys did. And film can only do so much until you're actually out in the field.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I guess I didn't give this context. We're sitting here now after the hunt is over in terms of tags filled. And we'll obviously get into that, but we haven't been sitting in the cabin this whole time. If you like watch the film of my 2022 hunt, we did get stuck in this very spot for several days. Started the hunt, were forced off the mountain, sat here for way too long, and then got to finish the hunt. And I finally killed a billy then on day 8 or 9, whatever the last day was. But we're recording this one post-hunt, successful hunt. We'll get into that. Again, we're not going to like tell every detail in this podcast. I do kind of, at least initially, let's like dive into in the field and the hunt story. But like all Alaska hunts, and I think it's worth mentioning, we say it all the time, but it's your probably first experience with this, Jake, of we traveled up, flew commercial to Juneau, and then had some other travel out of Juneau that's non-commercial. And basically we had a flight delay. They kept saying, I think we were supposed to leave at 10, and they're like, check back at 10:30, check back at 11, et cetera, et cetera. We finally get to go ahead. We get on the plane. We're like, safety briefing's over, all of our stuff is loaded, the pilot's literally flipping switches to start the plane, and then he grabs his cell phone and says, hello? Okay. And then hangs up the phone, starts reflipping switches, shuts the plane down. I was like, we're grounded, we're not flying today. So, and then they ended up canceling all flights that day. And again, it's one of those things that I've done it enough, but even every time there's delays in Alaska, it's still a tough pill to swallow because you've come all this way and you just want to be hunting. Mm-hmm. And we essentially lost a whole hunting day stuck in Juneau. Finally made it here to this base camp. Spent the afternoon like sorting gear and really finalizing a hunt plan, because that's the other unique thing with going into these hunts, Mark, is someone could ask you before booking a hunt, hey, what does this hunt look like? They could ask 2 years in advance. I tried to get information from you 2 weeks in advance. I tried to get information from you 2 days in advance, but it's really not till you kind of get here that we can really figure out what the hunt plan is in a way. Like, why is that?
Yeah, exactly. There's just so many variables. Depending on quotas, like we described on the pre-hunt podcast with Steve, the units divided up into micro subunits, each with their own quota. So throughout the season, those certain areas will get knocked off as the season goes. So depending on availability of quotas, that can direct where we can hunt, for one thing, and then weather also dictates, what areas are going to be accessible and what areas might make for a good hunt at the very last second. So a lot of times we just can't make that decision before it's time to go.
Yeah. There was when we did my hunt in 2022, you had, talked with me, given me options and ideas, and one idea you threw out back then was going up this river system you had never hunted and getting into country you never hunted.
Right.
We ended up not being able to do that in 22, I think because the river's too high, right? And then this year, that was kind of an option, but it was almost the opposite. You were worried about that river getting too low.
Right.
But we did have a window where you thought it was going to be possible.
Right.
And as soon as I knew, in a way, it was like, oh man, this original plan from a couple of years ago is one of the hunt options. Like, I really wanted to do it, partially because I had looked at that area just on maps. And then, I told you this back then, and even with this hunt, like, hey, if there's a new spot you've never been to, but you've been curious to go into with clients, I know that that's a hard thing for you to do with clients, is you're essentially taking a gamble because you haven't been into this country. Mm-hmm. But I've always told you, like, let's just go, send it. If it doesn't work, we can back out and, go to an area. So
yeah, that's one of the fun parts of having you guys come is, for one thing, I know that you're all like highly capable in the mountains, and another thing, just that openness to try something new is fun for me. Takes some of the pressure off of being able to try a new area with highly capable people. Kind of eliminates some of that feeling of risk or the pressure that comes with producing,
right,
quote unquote. So.
Yeah. So that was the plan. We got our way up the river. What were your thoughts just getting into country, Jake?
I was just laughing at what he said about being capable.
I did a death hike with you. And,
No, true. That was 2 years ago. Yeah. We'll get into that. But what was the question again?
Just once, like, skip ahead. We know what the hunt plan is. We figure out gear and everything else at the base camp. We essentially hit the
And that
water.
was stressful too.
Yeah.
Like here at base camp, like I've never been on this hunt before. And so I think I asked you a million questions, asked you another million questions. And
At one point, we were debating, like, do we take pants?
yeah, like
Yeah.
I hear Mark say, like, our guide Mark, he's like, I'm only doing rain pants. And I'm like, when have I ever gone on a hunt that I just wear rain pants? And so that was just totally, messing up my mind. So I finally ended up doing that. I switched sleeping bags last second. He had a 0-degree synthetic bag, which I'm glad, I took. It was just because a mind game for me, here in, just moisture, snow, and just that rough country Alaska. Like I just wanted to be comfortable in my head. So yeah, packing up here at base camp was just like, okay, 70-pound pack almost, and I'm hiking up. Like, yeah, it's just crazy to think. But yeah, when we got into there, right when we got dropped off at the last spot, where we camped that night, and just looking up this mountain, shoot, I mean, it was hard to like wrap my head around, like, we're going up that. It was just, yeah, the whole day, man. It was just a mental battle of like, wow, that's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
Because of the steepness, looking at it from the bottom, or the brush,
like
or
from the bottom,
sections of cliffs.
Yeah, you got those sections of cliffs really mess with my head, and just kind of seeing like, how do you navigate over that?
Well, you're probably hearing, like, because we were having those discussions, right? Like, you, at this point, you'd been up the river to this area, but you'd never been on the mountain.
Right.
So, like, we're sitting there from below, looking at this mountain and having those conversations. Like, hey, it looks like we could go here. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could traverse across those cliffs. Maybe we can't.
Right.
Maybe what's on the other side that we can't see is traversable. Maybe it's not. So you're probably hearing some of that and thinking, say what?
Yeah.
A bunch of maybes.
Yeah, a bunch of maybes.
Yeah,
Hopefully there's a bench there we can cross. Not sure.
Yeah, and I just knew I was along for the ride. Like, I didn't feel like I had any input to add because I've never been on this hunt before. So it's like, all right, I'll trust the guys who have been on this hunt, and we'll do it.
Yeah. So we shuttled up the river. Well, basically all of the four of us in gear is dicey to fit in your boat to navigate this river.
Yeah, it's
those
kind
water
of
levels.
Yeah, it's like a super cub on the water. Small capacity, built for skinny rivers and stuff like that.
So we leapfrogged up. We all finally get to the point where we're at the base of this mountain. We have probably at that point 4 hours of daylight or something.
Yeah,
roughly.
Yeah, 4, maybe 5, but
yeah. And so we're looking at the mountain. We're talking. Hadn't made a decision yet what we're going to do. And I remember, Justin, like, at some point you were just like, this is like such a different hunt than, like, if you're in Idaho and you had 4 hours of daylight and you're looking at a mountain, you're just like, let's go.
Yeah, I want to get
figure it
closer.
out.
I want to camp, to where tomorrow morning we can just go and be that much closer. But yeah, as we get into it, there's really nowhere to camp until we actually find our spot.
Yeah. So we make that decision to sit there, and it almost felt like wasting 4 or 5 hours of daylight without making progress.
Mm-hmm. And being on this hunt a couple years ago and seeing the delays in weather and stuff, and like you could tell, it was like, man, we want to execute every single day that we can, and so I could see a little bit of like tense between you and just the timing of, how much time are we going to wait? But ultimately, we made the right call. And
that's always
fantastic.
an interesting thing to try to explain to people. Like, you can't just pick a spot to camp anywhere.
Which also goes back to like why you try and hunt areas somewhat.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So few flat spots on the mountain without doing serious excavation. And then also with that is the water situation, which is weird because it's so wet here, but the mountains just don't hold water. So there's a lot of times minimal water access. There's even some places we have to haul water just because there's no water up high.
It's so weird because everything, I remember at one point you asked, like, is the ground ever dry here? Like, everything is wet, but flowing steady water is weird.
Yeah. So
I thought the whole boating in experience was really cool. That's one thing with the project. I've been on all 3 of the hunts, and every single one of them has been a little bit different, and had different ways that we got into the field, and just different, the whole picture was different in a sense. But on a filming standpoint, taking the boat in, that's something I've never done before. That was extremely cool. And, seeing the bald eagles fly in front of us, and was it the golden eagles?
Yep, there's some goldens around, yeah.
Jake saw moose. It was just super cool to like set the tone of going in by boat, something I've never done. So
yeah,
it's been really cool with all of the hunts to have just small different experiences, new stuff, mixed in. So that was a really cool part of it.
Yeah. So basically we get to this spot before really all 4 of us were there. Did I get up there first? I don't remember. Me and you, Jake?
Yeah, you were there.
But anyway, we were glassing and started seeing goats up on the mountain.
Yeah.
And then by the time all 4 of us were there, we had seen at least 9 goats total, different pockets throughout this mountain. But then even though we had daylight, visibility was super mixed. So we'd go through periods of like, oh, we can glass for goats. And then that lasts 5 minutes and disappears for 45 minutes. So really in the 4 or 5 hours of daylight, we definitely did some glassing, but it wasn't really consistent. Obviously made the decision to camp there on the river. Did that, woke up at a good time. Obviously had to wait for daylight to navigate the river to get further up to where we wanted to start hiking. So the next day the hunt just becomes that short shuttle up to the hike spot, taking care of the boat, getting it secured, waders off, tarped, and then getting in finally hike mode. I think at this point that would have been, was that Sunday? Monday.
Well, that's the funny part too, because we wanted to go get to where we were going to park the boat so we could get it all taken care of and camp there that night and be able to just hike in the morning. Because just dealing with the boat, putting it up to, make sure it's protected in a good, safe spot, and bears aren't going to get into it, and all that takes a lot of time too. So we tried to do that that afternoon, and we got there, and we're like, there's no reasonable place to camp, even right there, right next to the water.
Yeah, there's just a big bank, and then boulders and alders and stuff.
Yeah, so we went back to the gravel bar and decided to camp out there, and then we did have to deal with the boat in the morning again.
Yeah. So Monday, we finally started hiking. It felt like up to this point, we left the States Friday, and it's Monday, and it's the first time we're putting boots on to start the hunt.
We were anxious.
Yeah, we were anxious, for sure. Start the hike. Really the first chunk of that, I wouldn't say it was easy. It wasn't a walk in the park, but for goat country, and not being in the country before, it was easy, relative,
nice.
right?
It was a nice starter.
Yeah, Jake, it was all new to you, but for obviously us, we've done it. You do it all the time, Jess and I have done it just once. It was a nice way to start gaining some elevation in goat country. It was
good
fortunate.
Old growth spruce and hemlock with minimal brush underneath. It was good travel.
What were your thoughts when we finally started hiking?
Yeah, I was originally expecting just thick alder brush, just thick the whole way up. And so when we got out of that, right when we got out of the river, that soft marshy stuff, it was an incline the whole way up, but it wasn't bad at all. So I didn't have any issues whatsoever. Not until we got up higher is when things just immediately started hurting for me.
Definitely a progression, gradual, and then all of a sudden it starts going.
Then it starts getting steep. Yeah, once we started getting to the steep stuff, then I start cramping in both legs, right ankle's killing me, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. Yeah. It was a tough one right there.
What was going on with the ankle? Was it a tweak, or
just because we were side hilling all the time?
But there was no instance that hurt it,
like a vent that rolled in?
No. It was just constant.
Well, and you got close to 70 pounds on your back, and it's probably something you haven't done a whole lot of.
Yeah, this year now.
Yeah. It's always, for me, that weight is the biggest thing that gets you.
So I think it was just that, and just side hilling to the right. It just bothered my right ankle quite a bit. So that was progressively getting worse and worse, and we finally kind of took that one break. I don't know if you guys remember. It was like right when we got out of that first alder patch, and I like look down, and I'm like, oh, I got all queasy.
I'm like, Jake, look at the view. Isn't this beautiful?
And I'm looking at the...
He's like, no, I can't. I can't look.
I'm looking at the mountain.
Dude,
no,
you
can't
have
do
to.
It. And it's just like, seeing that river, I'm sure viewers, maybe some people relate to me, but it's just like that vertigo feeling. Like, I've been in steep stuff like that in Idaho, hunting steep mountains, but that view down there, and how just massive, some of this country is, and then seeing the river down there, knowing we still have to go further up, and it was just like messing with me. Probably wasn't drinking enough water because, like, I told the guys, like, I don't like heights, and I remember you're like, oh really? I'm like, yeah, especially when it gets open. And he's like, oh man, like he's gonna be in for a rude awakening, because once we get into the alpine, like that's all it is open and steep. And so like I stand up, all of a sudden both my quads just start locking up, cramping, and I like can't move. And it was just it was a nightmare. I remember you gave me KT tape so I could wrap my ankle up. Mm-hmm. I started drinking some water, and it was just like slow going for like 5 minutes. I was just like, come on, wake up, let's go. And I finally got back to...
It was interesting thinking back at it now, because it got hard at one point, like kind of quickly, for many reasons. Because as you said, like the elevation got steeper, but then as we got steeper is also when it started to get brushier, and all the alders. And then so like now it's steeper and you're side hilling and you're fighting the brush and the alders. So it was like there was definitely a transition in that hike in where it went from like, oh, this isn't bad to like, oh, this is getting tougher.
Oh yeah, we were pushing it for sure. I mean, I was sweating like crazy, like going uphill, going through some of those alder tunnels, like sometimes crawling up them. Basically, you got a 70-pound pack, like you're pushing it for sure.
Yeah,
I think that where that experience comes in too, because personally, I did it 2 years ago, and hiking with these guys and Tyler Boschma, they are goats themselves, and they basically can run up that mountain. And for me, I tried to keep up on that first initial big climb and pretty much got wasted, just couldn't do that pace. And so I knew going in that I needed to slow down, and that's what I kept telling you. It's just...
And I did. Like every time we took a break, you guys were like 20 or 30 yards ahead of me. I was still keeping up, but like every time you guys took a break, I just knew if I get up there when they're taking a break, if I do that extra 20 to 30 yards, sure as heck, they're going to continue to hike. So I'm just going to stop back here and take a break. Like I kept telling them, like, I'm good. I'm just taking a break, going at my pace. Like I was not 100 yards back, dying, because I wasn't, I was smiling the whole way up.
Yeah. Like,
this is good. I'm just going at my pace. We're not in a rush. Like obviously we got to beat, before it gets dark so we can find a camp spot. I knew that. But yeah, I kept hearing him.
That's funny you said you kept smiling, because a few times I would pass you and just go up to them, and they'd be like, hey, how's he doing? Well, he's still smiling.
Yeah.
He's doing all right.
Yeah. No, I mean...
No, you did good. I mean, it's important on a long hunt that you don't kill yourself out of the gate.
Yeah. And you keep morale high. You just keep smiling. Like, it was tough.
Yeah. And to address pack weight, like, all of us were pretty heavy, but we went up the mountain with more gear than we would elk hunting, right? Mm-hmm. Like, as you said, 0-degree bag, cold weather bag, bigger tents, more clothes in general. But then we packed a full 8 days worth of food. So we were definitely not light going up there, for sure. Yeah, so we, I don't know, getting to essentially what became camp. Mm-hmm. Talk about maybe that spot, stopping there, kind of evaluating that type of decision.
Yeah, it was, a spot we keyed in on from down below that appeared to be a bench, and same with on the map appeared to be a bench. And we kind of battled that whole, like, the map versus reality thing.
It wasn't
the entire time. Like,
wasn't correlating.
It was a challenge. Wasn't exactly what we expected, even from looking at it from below. The terrain wasn't quite what we expected or as easily traversable as we hoped for. But ultimately we did find a bench with a timber stand that made for good camp. And when we got there, we weren't at that time not sure we were going to stay there. We took some time to look around. Eventually we did have, it was still really limited visibility. So you don't want to, we knew we're in goat habitat, like we'd glassed up goats really close by
at that elevation band.
And, so we knew we didn't want to go, just bumping around in the fog, blowing stuff out that we never get a chance to even see. So that's always a risk. And then also it was like after that point, we didn't see anywhere that might be campable for the foreseeable however far. So we kind of wanted to keep going.
It felt like the same decision as it did the day before to camp on the river, because you're in the same spot of, we have 4 or 5 hours of daylight again. We want to be making progress, but you almost like are holding yourself back. Like it felt, essentially all we did the first day was get up the river. And then now all we did was get kind of up the mountain. And it was it was the right call. Like I was full in on making that call, but at the same time, it's like, gosh, we're giving up more daylight. Like it's tough to hold yourself back.
It's kind of funny that one of my other guides kind of always jokes about this Jeremiah Johnson quote, where when they're picking a place to build a cabin, he says, there's something to the effect of, there's good water and not much wind, we'll stay here. And that's what I almost always say when we're making camp. Like, we got water here, we're out of the wind, we don't know what's after this, let's stay here for now, and then we have a full day to work with tomorrow to get to the next potential camp spot.
At that point, had you guys pulled weather to see how many huntable days, can't remember, that we were actually going to have?
We were keeping an eye on the weather for sure, and that was definitely playing into decisions, a lot of decisions, especially as looking a few days down the road at getting out in the boat. We were really keeping an eye on that because we knew temperature was dropping, which meant water levels were going to drop and potential ice issues. If we stayed up there much longer boat wise, we're going to have trouble getting out. But then also the days on the mountain, as far as visibility, that did play into kind of how we attacked things.
That was about the point I realized we were going to be going back down and possibly going back up, just like we did 2 years ago.
Another spot.
I was like, here we go again.
Part of what settled it for me too to stay there was just going back to this disconnect between what the maps were showing us and then what we ended up experiencing on the ground was so different that I was like, you can't just look at the head and look at the map and trust it and go, oh yeah, if we just push another 1,000 feet, or we have 3 hours, we could get here and make camp. Because at that point when you're looking at the map and then we're in country you've never been in and don't actually know, it's like there's no guarantee that we can project that out. So we essentially, it felt very similar of, we got in there kind of, but then you're kind of leaving daylight on the table. But was ultimately the right call. Ended up, as you said, mixed visibility. Definitely did some glassing, and then had that one goat.
I was gonna say, when we got there, then I spotted that
group of
four goats. So it was still productive. At least we were able to get eyes, kind of see where they were, and then above us, we had that one goat kind of playing peekaboo with us. So it was still at least productive. We were seeing goats. We had eyes on goats.
So that first group ended up being a nanny, a second-year kid, a first-year kid, and young Billy is what it looked like in that group of 4. And then that one that came out right above us, which was shooting range, but like in the cliffs, who knows if it hangs up in there. I mean, it's going to take a massive fall, might hang up in the cliffs. But judging goats, of all the ways to judge them, like from steep below is really tough.
Yeah.
Because you just don't, unless you get a really good profile somehow, but a lot of times they're looking over the cliff and you're seeing like their nose first, and you can't really see the shape of their face very well, the length of their face, which is key in judging, especially maturity, and then the slope of the horns you're just not getting a good look at. So it was like Nanny, Billy, weren't really sure, and eventually we just decided we got some good video of it, which was helpful in judging, and deducted it looked more Nanny than Billy, and something we weren't super interested anyways. So.
Yeah, I can't remember, was it that night or the next morning you had mentioned something to me about, which was I had been thinking of and wrestling myself, but you mentioned like, hey, what if we leave camp here and then just go hunt and move light, from here? Was it that night or was it the following night?
I mentioned it first thing in the morning, and you said you had been thinking about it the night before, and I was too. I was thinking about it the night before, so I wanted to mention it first thing in the morning before people started popping steaks and stuff like that. Yeah. That it was a discussion we should have based on the weather. Thinking we probably couldn't stay up there more than 2 days based on like the projected snowfall and temperatures dropping.
Yeah. So you're thinking, if we're moving with camp, we're obviously heavier, we're moving slower, we're taking a gamble on even finding a good camp. Mm-hmm. And is it worth doing all that when in reality, we may have to get off this mountain in a day or two, regardless of what happens, like with goat hunting because of the river?
Yep.
Yeah. So, that morning, make that decision. Like I said, I had been thinking about it. You mentioned it. And it was immediately like, let's just move. It looked like we were going to have a really good weather day. And I was confident, man, if we're up here based on what we had seen, if we have a good full day, I'm confident we'll get on a Billy. Like whether, bullets are flying, I don't know, but like I'm confident we'll find one. And we started hiking from camp. It was probably some of what we were doing, like almost immediately from camp. I was thinking was probably pushing you out of your comfort zone a little bit, Jake, just based on like steepness, a little bit of exposure. I mean, there wasn't a ton, but there's a couple maneuvers, if you will, that I was just like, this is probably not super comfortable for you.
You guys did a great job too of not bringing it up. Like, you guys just would ask me like, you doing good? Good, great. You wouldn't dwell on it, and you would just make sure you just kept me going. Like, you'd check on me for like a second and then go. Again, like, I can do steep, but looking back was killing me. And I think it was great that we stayed the night before, or we stayed that night, just to kind of, all right, accept the fact that we're probably going to go around that. Like, I didn't want to traverse that with, 3 hours left of light. And then just,
and a heavier pack if we would have. Yeah, exactly.
So going up that with a lighter weight pack, we started skirting around. Like that first portion was just like a little bit, out of my comfort zone. But then once we got around, to that clump of trees, I was good. As the hunt kept going, more hours kept going by, I was getting better and better. Like, I was accepting it more. Like, and we're only going up. Like, everything is all relative. Like, I kept telling myself that, like, it's just gradually going up more. So it's not getting, it was getting a little bit more steeper in some places, but for the most part, everything was pretty similar.
Yeah.
But that first pull out of camp was, didn't love it.
Yeah.
I didn't love it.
Yeah, we decided to contour and maintain elevation, but it was a steep side hill. With, some steep little avalanche chutes to cross, and side hill and alders, which is the way, the hardest way to go through alders, right. Side hilling through them. That was a tough go right out the gate that day. I was kind of curious, Justin, like, I always feel bad for you looking at you with your camera on a monopod, can't use trekking poles, can't use your hands near as much. Like, I'd never want to do that without 2 trekking poles and ideally a pick on one of them. Mm-hmm.
It sucks.
I mean, yeah. What's it like trying to capture what's going on while keeping yourself safe, keeping up?
Yeah. I've just done it enough to know that if I'm using my trekking poles, I'm not filming enough, and I want to show those tough parts, you know, to really show the viewers what we're experiencing. And so the best way to do it is, I could probably get away with doing it handheld and, you know, like I would do on a heavy packout, but I just feel I'm more stable with the camera. I can kind of use it as a single trekking pole, but it does have some claw feet that kind of creates the base of it and gets tangled in the alders and whatnot. I don't know. I've just gotten used to it, I guess, and just pick my way through it and go slow. And Jake kept telling me, like, I don't know how you're doing it with my trekking poles. And
well, he's part mountain goat too, but it's funny because he was saying, like, he almost didn't want to have trekking poles because he saw me. He was behind me most of the time.
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, like, that's why I don't carry trekking poles. Like,
there's a lot of times where I think if you're just scrambling and just stand low and grabbing branches in the grass and stuff, you can maneuver a lot easier than getting tangled up. So there's definitely, I think trekking poles for me downhill is more beneficial to slow me down. But yeah, I would much rather hike with poles, but then again, it goes back to a filming standpoint. I feel like I can be more present and do my job in a sense. So
yeah. It's definitely impressive.
I mean, you're constantly not only, you know, fighting through the alders, but you've got, you know, a lot of money on the top of that monopod. So you're trying to like weave it through the alders and not rip off a microphone or scratch your lens. So it's a whole nother dynamic to kind of comprehend. And then you add in spitting rain or snow, you know, the wind, all those other factors that come in. And then it's constantly getting out, you know, lens wipes and cleaning your lenses off. And, you know, so there's a lot of, luckily I've done enough of these tough hunts. And that day, you know, not having the weather to precip, there's so many times I'd love to film the intense, you know, portions of a hunt, but the rain comes in and, you know,
can't have the camera.
You're in too much of a dangerous situation to film. Especially the heavier packouts that we do. This one I was able to capture quite a bit, which was cool. But yeah, they're all different in all ways. Just guess I've gotten used to hiking with the monopod.
Yeah. It's insane what you do. Yeah, it really is. I mean, I was like witness of that. It was the first time was the goat hunt, like in 2022 that you filmed that not the first time I met you, but the first time I went on a hunt that you just like were strictly there to film and photo. And I've told you this before, but like coming out of that hunt, I was like blown away that you had as much footage as you did film wise, as many photos you did. You're still there, like keeping up and even helping on the hunt, right? Like spotting goats, like it's insane.
And I always lose track of how much I have actually filmed on a hunt because it's just out of habit, you know, and a lot of the times where we're interacting and talking about what we're going to do next, and, you know, I'm not filming at that point, being part of the hunt, so you don't know exactly how much I'm filming, and then when we get back here and we can actually look at it, you're like, holy crap, you got that. So that's what's cool, is if you are constantly filming and staying in the moment, you know, you have a much easier story to tell through that. So
we were climbing out of camp, did a bunch of side hilling, kind of get out of the alders a little bit, get more into the ferns, working up this little kind of creek. Really to a point where I expected we would have seen something by now, like seen some goats, just because we broke out and had more visibility. And we're kind of hiking up, and I don't know, like everyone won't think this is funny as I do, but knowing you pretty well, Mark, having done several hunts together now, like you just said, I don't even think to me, like almost just out loud under your breath, like all he did, Mr. Calm over here, was say, come on, goats. And it was like about like that, and I think to himself, but I'm behind him and heard him, and I thought, wow. Because that's about as like It was like a big statement. Just that little thing coming from you was like a big statement where I could tell you were, I don't know, I want to call it frustrated, dejected. I don't know where your head was, but where was your head? Because I knew just that little thing. I was like, oh, he's not where he thinks we would be at this point of the hunt, I think.
Yeah, I think it was just weighing on my mind, like knowing I think we have to be off this mountain in 2 days.
Yeah.
And headed downriver. So it's just weighing heavy on my mind, like, man, I do not want to have to bail off here because of weather, like similar to 2022, without, at least one billy or getting a chance at something. So that was definitely, I was getting frustrated.
Yeah.
Just with the scenario, of being like really committed to a spot between the boat and the hike. And just the thought of bailing off there. And then not seeing goats yet that day. Yeah. I was just like, oh man, come on.
When we got
need
up
something
to that
break
point,
our way.
I didn't love the view, like what we were seeing. 2022, we would get into Alpine and it was just like these massive drainages and big bowls where you could like, oh, there's a goat, there's a goat, there's a goat, there's a goat. Really, we didn't have much of a vantage point. We knew like we were going to have to make a big change in elevation or go way out the ridge.
We were in a tighter pocket.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. So that was, and it was much thicker with all those alders too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so even our just visibility was limited by brush yet for quite of the time. And then like knowing the way that we glass stuff and the way goats behave in some of these micro areas, there are a lot of times like off the faces, overlooking the river. So when we kind of got up into the bowl, we kind of lose all our vantage of being able to locate stuff that's down off the face and in and out of the alders. So it's like, man, I don't know if there's going to be something up this high yet that's not off of a ledge somewhere where we just can't see it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a small statement, but a big statement to me. We kept gaining some elevation, and then I lose track of time and distance, but not terribly long after that. Like you were like, we should probably go peek over this edge, which I told you this after the fact was such a small thing, but just shows like you as a guide. Expand on what you just said, like understanding where country opens up. You've never been on this mountain, but you've looked at the maps a lot, and you basically know if like we just go peek over this edge, this rise, it's going to open up new country, and could be a spot that could hold goats. So
yeah, for a while there we traveled right along a creek, basically straight up a creek, so we were kind of tucked where we didn't have any visibility. But for one thing, it was the least brushy travel, but also, we're just trying to gain elevation to a better vantage point, and we don't want to be traveling like a spine ridge where we're exposed as we're just hiking along. So we traveled up a creek, and then things were starting to open up, and it was like I was eyeing something higher up to get to, but then I was like, based on what I see, seems like we should pop over this little knob and just see what we can see from here. If we can't see anything, we'll drop back down at the creek and go further. Mm-hmm. So we're not, again, traveling that exposed.
Yeah. And then, Justin, you always say you wait for Mark's calm words of there's some goats or there's a billy.
He's like, he just crests, and I'm watching him closely, and I'm recording already. And he's like, are you recording? I'm like, yep. He's like, there's 2 goats on the skyline. I'm like, yes, here we go. And then I look back and told Jake, I was like, there's 2 goats. And it's so funny because he's so calm. If it was me, I'd have been like, 2 goats up there, let's go. Grab your rifle. Yeah, he's so calm. It worked out perfect. I always like to catch that reaction instead of reenactments or, just like cutting right into the action. So anytime you can get somebody cresting and spotting game is always so cool, but yeah, nice and calm. But it was great. It kept us all relaxed, and that's what Jakey needed.
Yeah. So there's zero doubt. I told Jake going into this, like, man, this is your hunt. Yeah, I have a tag, but it would be icing on the cake. Like, no matter what happens, as long as you want to shoot, like, this is your hunt. So as soon as we saw 2 goats, I didn't even honestly care that there was 2. I didn't think about, like, great, one for each of us. I was just like, 2 chances. Like, they were, when we saw them, one was somewhat in a shootable position, one wasn't. So I was like, it just gives you 2 looks of what you feel comfortable with shooting. And then I had told you, I think that early that morning or maybe the night before, I just told you, Mark, like, hey man, be thinking about, because I know what we're facing with getting off this mountain, what the weather's like, getting down the river. I just told you in advance, like, be thinking about whether we do or don't want to kill 2 goats up here. Like, I'm good either way, but just be thinking about it. Because I didn't want to find ourselves in a situation where it happens fast and then should or shouldn't we have killed 2 goats? I just wanted to go into that with both of us thinking about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, from your perspective, all of a sudden we have 2 billies spotted. What happens?
Yeah. So he tells me that, and then you come over and tell me, you're like, hey, we have 2 goats. Get your rifle off your pack. Take your time. They're just bedded. No rush. And I think I take my time because I just wanted to be quiet. I didn't know how far they were because I never got a visual of them. And then I kind of creeped over and I saw them. I still hadn't got any of my stuff off my pack. My rifle's still attached to the pack. So it was kind of that matter of be quiet, go quick, but don't rush. Just everything's all happening at once. So yeah, at that point, like, I had gone back, got my rifle and everything. You had gotten your rifle out of your pack too. And Justin got the camera set up. Everybody's all in their own position. And I know I set my rifle up just to the left of you, but then Justin's camera was to the right on the tripod. And so I'm shooting a muzzle brake. And so he kept telling me, like, hey, move. You can't shoot there.
Yeah, I've done this enough.
You're in the cameraman zone.
The muzzle is going to move my camera for sure, especially on the spongy terrain that the tripod's sitting on. So
it was hard because I had earbuds
in too.
Know.
I'm like trying to, come on.
And so I didn't know where to go because, like, to the left of you didn't seem like, because you were set up. And so the left of you, I'm like, is that shootable? And then I didn't know if I could get up and move, to the top, if they were going to spot me or anything. So I was just cautious. I don't know how goats do what goats do when they see, other movement. So we ended up going up, I don't know, 10 yards up from where we were to like another flat spot. And you followed me and we all get set up. And so you were behind the main camera, right? Or
the spotter and the main camera.
Yeah.
Yep. So I set up the main camera on the 2 goats, both in frame. And then grabbed my monopod and came around, and I was kind of filming over the shoulder.
Yeah.
Then he was going to man the spotter and the big lens and just keep an eye on everything, hit record, and then I went up there with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, so then we get up there. Mark gets to my left, Justin's to my right. And it was basically go time. So I pulled out my rangefinder. I'm getting a range. Was it 375 I was getting? And so, yeah, one goat was just to the, on the lower side. They're basically, I got a goat to my right and to the left. One on the right's a little bit higher up. At first, I had, when we got look of them, the right one kind of presented a better shot. But once we moved over and everything, the one to the left gave me a better shot. So I looked over to you and I was like, hey, that one to the left, just stood up. He's giving me a better shot. And you're like, all right, take your time. I range. I dial, I dry fire, and I think I dry fired and I said, that's a dead billy.
Yeah.
I look back, I'm like, we're confirming these are both billies, right? And everybody's like, yeah. I think I asked like a million questions. Put one in the chamber, took my time. You tapped me. You were trying to whisper to me. You're like, Jake.
I forgot.
I don't even know what you're saying.
Yeah, you had a muzzle brake, and the last 3+ years, every rifle hunt I've been on, someone's shooting suppressed, and so I'd never think about hearing protection. So I forgot you had plugs in, and so I'm like whispering to you, getting louder, trying not to get loud, and at one point in one of the films you can see it, I like tap you like so gently.
Such a gentle tap. Like, why is he ignoring me? Yeah, and then so once you got my attention, he was just telling me like, take your time, pick a spot, don't rush. So I'm like, all right, I'm ready. I look back at you. I'm like, you good? And 5 seconds later, take it off safety, pull through the shot, and I hit him a little bit in the shoulder. He was facing, so I hit him in the right shoulder. He was facing up towards the mountain, and he dropped, and he went down, put another one in. And so he was down, and then that other goat stood up. And I was thrilled. I was shaking, I wasn't shaking any time before that. I was calm, but once I made that shot and I saw impact and he went down, I was...
Yeah, it was really cool to go back. We've been watching the footage, last coming out and then here in camp, and just his reaction, right after he shoots, his breathing gets all heavy, and you could see his legs shaking and his hands go up by his face, and it was a cool moment to
But I was staying in the scope, making sure everything was good, watching, and then seeing that other goat just kind of stand up, observe, and I'll let you take over.
I don't remember what conversation we had before Jake and I moved up the hill, because we were kind of walking away from you a little bit. We weren't in direct communication. And I remember saying something like, I'm not going to push it, but if it's perfect, an opportunity at a second goat is perfect. And in my head, that means Jake shoots and it's down, and I'm not worried about recovering it, or if it's runs away or off a cliff. And I'm also not going to force trying to make something happen. If the second goat's running away, I'm clearly not going to take a shot at it moving, or if it goes off the backside, I'm not going to run after it, whatever. But I just remember saying something to the effect of if everything's perfect, are we good? I don't know. And I don't even know if we answered the question.
I don't think we still did. I think we had a brief conversation. You tried to give me no thought, yes or no. What do you think?
Yeah, I tried to put you on the spot, because you're so analytical. I was like, if you have to decide right now, yes or no, can I shoot a second goat? And of course you tried to think about it.
Still didn't answer. But I was the thought process at that time was, it was early enough in the day. I felt good. Even if we did get 2 down, I felt there was a pretty good chance we could get everything, even if we had to shuttle loads, that we could get everything to camp that night. And felt like that was a good enough position that we could pull it off and still get out, in the timely manner that we wanted to.
Yeah.
So we were still kind of waffling.
Yeah.
So there was no solid decision of yes, shoot or not before Jake shot.
Yeah. So Jake shoots. I'm looking at Jake's goat. That's what my focus is on, but it's down and in sight. And then the other goat was bedded, above it, up to the right, and it's bedded and didn't have a great shot opportunity. But then it stands and just does its big old goat stature, and I just see his long hair and hide, and it's backlit and everything is perfect, and it's a gorgeous goat. And as that happens, I'm like, oh no. I went from not caring to that's what I want. And about the time I'm having that thought, I hear you from behind. I don't know what you said, go for it if you want it or something.
Yeah, I think it's something to that effect. I'm not sure. But
yeah.
Mark, if you want him, take him.
Yeah,
that's what it was. So, needless to say, it didn't, no convincing. I'm like, So, yeah, I got on him right away. I was, getting ready to shoot, and then when we moved, I had ranged with my rangefinder, and then dialed my scope, and I was, down the gun and thought, I better re-range again. A lot had just happened, right? So I come back out, I think re-ranged, make sure I was dialed right, and then just shot and drilled him in the shoulder, impact, and he kind of stumbled a little bit, was on his feet, and then turned and gave me a good presentation. It was all within a couple seconds, and then I basically chambered second one, hit him basically in the exact same spot, and then he just tips over, and right there on the ridge you essentially see my goat down, your goat down, and then it was just holy cow.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah, it was cool, man. I remember putting the gun on safety and looking over to you and giving you a big ol' hug. I was tearing up. Like, man, it was incredible because I watched all of that through my scope too. Like, I hear the audible of you saying, you know, go for him if you want him. You shoot him, he goes down, and it was just like, whoa. Yeah. It was that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing, again, like for me, in those moments of just like, not only did that happen in terms of like killing animals, but I just always go back to like, who are you with? Like, how did it go down? Where are you at? Like, in that moment, like, all those things matter to me. And it was just like, man, to be with you guys, yes, to kill 2 goats, to be in the spot we were is just, like you said it, Justin, like, I could tell you were excited, not only that we filled tags, but like, these are going to be epic photos.
Oh,
like, this is the coolest spot ever.
I could tell right away where they were at. Like, if they were going to stay up on that ridge. Yeah, mind-blowing photos.
Yeah.
Some of the best that I would have ever taken would be in that location, for sure.
Like when we say that, like it's not about
not
photos for Instagram. It's just like,
absolutely,
dude, like the coolest.
Just the memory behind that.
I remember
when
I get the chills thinking about it.
When we finally went up to them, and you know everybody's just like taking it in. We hadn't even walked up to the goats yet.
Yeah.
And I just walked over to the edge and just like put my arms out like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Like the landscape, the mountains, the glaciers, the snow line. It's just like, you can't beat this. Like, this is...
And meanwhile, Jake's sitting there with his head down, and we're all like, look at this thing, this is amazing. And Jake's like, I can't.
Yeah, I had to help him out. He was in
No, I mean, once we got up to the goats and we walked up, you know, Mark's was closer, mine was just below. Like, we set our packs down, and then you guys immediately walked over to your goat, and just like the way, you know, we're finally hit snow. Then at that point, it's steep. We're on this like little bench, and then, you know, there's just a little bit of, you know, a little drop off, I'll call it. But yeah, I mean, I sit down and I see you guys walk over, and I immediately like get sick looking at you guys walking over, just standing up, grabbing it, and I'm like, whoa. And Justin immediately was like, you need to eat, get some food and water in you. And so I take like maybe 5-10 minutes, like while you guys put your hands on your goat, mine's still down there. Like, I knew like I need to adapt and just take some deep breaths, get some food in me before I go over there. I don't want to, you know, be dizzy or lightheaded when I go over to my goat. Like, you know, you got to make, you know, you got to be cautious where you step and everything. And I knew like my headspace, like gave myself a few minutes, I'd be fine. And I'm glad I did, because like I finally, while I was doing that though, I was getting some cool photos of you guys, you know, action shots and everything. But yeah, it was, that part was like the pinnacle of like, whoa, vertigo, sick to my stomach, lightheaded. Yeah, it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't a pleasant 5 to 10 minutes of just kind of feeling nauseous, but I ended up getting over that real quick.
Yeah, those time between, like when the tags filled, the animals were covered, but then before you, especially up here, like in Alaska, like just on my sheep hunt. I mean, my favorite part of the sheep hunt was when we sat there for 45 minutes, and it's just like mountains, glacier, sheep's there, like just soaking that in. And it was the same way for the goat hunt. Like, yeah, go put your hands on it and all that, but then also just like sit back and take in everything for what it is. It's like my favorite part of the hunt. But yeah, you get some food in you. We kind of checked out my goat a little bit, and then, you know, sat around for a bit, talked over stuff, and then when we're going down to see your goat, like you're ready to go down there, I remember getting up to it, and obviously I just looked at my goat, and then I put my hands on Jake's goat and like start to look at the horns, and I like move the hair and start to look at rings, and I'm just like, oh wow. Like, I just looked at my goat and then looked at your goat, which, you know, like roughly horn size is about the same, but like as soon as I saw that lower inch, I was like, there's a lot of rings in here. And I think you were recording with your phone. I said something to Mark, like, I don't want to sound like an idiot here, but this is an old goat. Like, you come look at this.
Double digits. Yeah, I remember that. I got that video. What did we say? Like, conservatively, like 10, 11?
Yeah, I would say conservatively 11.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Which you had said before at some point in the hunt, I think you had asked Mark, like, what's the youngest hunter you've ever had? And it's you. And then this at least 11-year-old goat ends up being the oldest goat you've ever killed.
Easily, yeah. I think 12, you know. I counted today and was like, I think I could come up with 13, you know. I don't know what somebody, you know, an experienced biologist who's aged a lot of old goats would come up with. I don't know, but I think 12, and that's easily the oldest goat that we've taken.
Half your age.
So that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
Super cool.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. Once we got down to, you know, once I was able to go put hands on the goat and, you know, we got him propped up on the rock, I finally like turned around and like took in that whole backdrop, the river, the other side of the mountain. It was breathtaking. And then just that whole, everything that went down, like I was just processing it all. I remember like looking at my goat, I got teary, like seeing you up there with yours, we were bringing it down, you know, it was just, I was emotional. Like, you know, if it wasn't for you guys, I don't think I'd be able to make it up that mountain. Like I didn't like being in there. I was out of my comfort zone, but then when I was finally up there, I was like, man, this is incredible. Like I'm truly, in a special place right now with some awesome people. So it was a cool moment for me.
Yeah, it was cool to be able to, we kind of drug my goat down to where yours was and then got them both together and getting those photos and then photos with all four of us. And yeah, it's pretty dang amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy experience project.
Yeah, it was. Then the work began.
Yeah. We both want full capes. Both probably doing full body mounts. Henry said, what did you tell him if he doesn't full body mount it?
Whoop his ass.
I could say that.
Henry made a strong
made
suggestion.
a threat.
You made a threat.
That if he did not do a full body after the work of, you know, caping and packing it out, but more so, you know, the quality age class, it's a special Billy. So yeah, certainly hope to see something done with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, definitely gonna happen.
Pressure's on. So yeah, Justin and I worked on my goat. Thanks for all the help. Mm-hmm. And then you two worked on your goat. Got it done in a pretty decent time.
Yeah, he basically did all the caping. I don't know. I've never caped an animal. Last time I caped one was back in 2016 with my dad's moose, but other than that, we've never done any taxidermy work. So I let the master do all of the fine cuts, and then when we'd get the quarters off and everything, like I would trim away and do that. And yeah, I mean, we made quick work. So we shot the goats, at like 11:30, maybe?
Yeah, I remember I was joking that morning, like, we'll kill something before lunch. And I remember, we got it done before lunchtime, both of them, obviously. But
and we got done
we had
skinning.
3 hours to spare before it was going to be dark, I believe.
Once we started moving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a team effort all the way. And it had to be, really, to make it work.
Yeah.
You know, if you guys weren't willing or capable of doing, you know, all the caping you did on yours and the butchering and helping butcher and debone, everybody had a hand in it, which was awesome and was absolutely what was needed to get out of there, you know, before dark, and hopefully you minimize travel in darkness and the stuff that we had to go through to get back to camp.
It wasn't that far away on X, just line of sight.
Just down the hill.
It was just down the hill, but
it took us all 3 hours to get back.
And I mean, I still can't get over with, like, again, we have loaded packs up, and we're packing all of our goats, everything, and then what we took for that hunt, and we're going down that steep stuff with the snow. I've got both trekking poles, and he's got the heaviest pack with a monopod, and he's just cruising down. Like he's an animal for sure, and getting all of the shots, keeping up with us.
Yeah,
pretty impressive. But yeah, I mean that hike out was smooth sailing. I would think, for like that first part.
The first bit.
Yeah, once we got down, and then we had to make that right cut through the alder patch.
Turtle.
Yeah, that's where it all began. That's where I started busting my shins up, and yeah, just crawling through those thick stuff was that was a lot.
Yeah,
I think for all of us, we were all pretty beat by that point. Once it started getting, I think we had like an hour left of daylight.
Yeah,
It was like 5:30, and it gets dark at 6:30. I think that last hour we were all just pretty spent, going down some steep stuff. Literally, like we're sliding on our butts, holding onto branches rather than trying to walk down it. And yeah, we were just like, we were tired.
Yeah, it's always so deceiving too. Like we get to that point in that pack out where you see the little bench and the group of trees that we're camped in, and like you feel like it's right there.
Oh man!
And you can reach it, but it's like it's an hour away, and you're staring at it. It's right there.
It's like 200 yards away, basically.
Yeah, and it's like an
think
hour
it
away.
was. Yeah.
I don't know. Did you notice, like, when it got dark, we were in the middle of all that Devil's Club?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, sweet. I don't know where my headlamp's at, and
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, when we got to that, well, we were going down that. At one point, I had fallen off a rock, face planted, and I'm like trying to get up, and he comes around laughing. Like, we had some good humor. I just turned
a corner, and Jake's like completely sprawled out on his belly and his face with this heavy pack on his back. So he's wiggling, trying to like be able to turn himself over.
Yeah.
It was just so dang
But he
funny.
knew I was okay. I'm not going to say he was laughing. Then I got, he was like, you good? Yeah. And all right, then the laugh started happening. I tried getting up so he couldn't see me face first on the ground, but yeah, just uneven terrain and a heavy pack, and just being tired. My legs were just not working.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we get into that dark stuff, and the Devil's Club came out. I remember you pulled out your headlamp, and I didn't. I was like, I'm just going to follow you. If I get smacked in the face by a branch, so be it.
Well, that last section, I eventually decided just to go low instead of traversing the really steep side hill that we did starting the day, knowing how difficult that was to begin with, and now being heavy and tired, decided to go down to what looked like more of a bench. And we got down there, and the brush was way taller than I expected. It looked like nice grass, but it was, mixed whatever berry bushes and rose bushes and tall grass, and you couldn't see what it was underneath, and it was hidden, boulder field.
Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden here it's up here, and then down there there's a hole, but you couldn't see that. So it was a lot harder than kind of expected it to be, and then we had to climb and push through a lot of brush to get back up to camp, and it got dark there, and had a nice Devil's Club patch and some alders, and
eventually made it up. That last part, I remember I was basically like half eyes open, like just all right, just follow the voice of Mark, just keep climbing up. I know, like that's where you were.
Yeah, that's
pretty spent.
I was struggling there. There was like this big rock face that had just a slither of moss
thin layer
on it, and being the guy in the back, everybody else kind of walked up it, but they would slide their feet and that moss would be gone, and then pretty much it was just a slick rock face at that point. And I was in one spot for probably 10 minutes trying to get up this rock.
Did you see me get stuck on that too?
No.
It was because it was like right after you said, hey, I'm going to hang here and get my headlamp. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to push, because I was following you guys and could just see enough of like where you were going that I didn't need mine. But on that same rock, I literally was like just stuck. Like my feet were moving and there was no traction. My hands had nothing to grab. And you guys were like distancing further out, and I'm losing your light. And then Justin, you had already just stopped and decided to put your light on. I didn't have mine out. I couldn't move.
I just used my watch, and I should have just gotten my pack and used a headlamp. I'm trying to hold light perfect and still crawl with one arm. It's a pain in the butt.
That's one of the key things of that country that doesn't exist in every area, every spot that we hunt here, but it was big slab rock, and a fair bit of the rock, especially if it was in timber, slightly shaded, had moss growing on it. And sometimes there'd be enough moss that it would hold you to traverse, and sometimes it was just an inch of moss, and you stepped on it and it would just slide. So that was an interesting thing to deal with.
Finally make it to camp. It's obviously after dark at this point. We're all tired, stoked, hungry, and then also immediately began going, we still have like 6 days of food up here. We know we have to pack out. Like, how much food can we eat to not pack out of here? Yeah. So we all kind of joked about having a 2,000 calorie dinner. I think you actually did.
I think I was the only one who had 2 meals. Yeah. I was like, I'm hungry. So I ate 1 meal in about 6 minutes, and I started boiling water for the other. And I remember, like, he had his food. I think you were just too tired to have another meal.
I was beat.
Like, no. Yeah, too much energy to make another meal and eat it.
Yeah, just cool, like, those nights, sitting around camp. Got the goats there with you, just successful, fun, completely spent and completely satisfied, like such a cool night. Eventually go to bed, and then definitely throughout the night, I was up a bunch just hearing snow falling and hitting the tent. So I knew we were going to wake up to something. I didn't know how much. And obviously we're tucked into good cover timber. So it's like whatever's here in this pocket at camp is going to look different as soon as we leave this timber cover too. But yeah, it was a good, cool night with snow falling and pack out plan for the next day. Yeah. Were you, because obviously a big concern was just getting out of there with 2 goats. After doing from where we killed and getting to camp, were you feeling good with getting out in 1 load, or where was your head at?
Yeah, I knew it was still going to be borderline once we added olive camp, but it seemed like we were capable, and that made me feel a lot better for sure. And I thought that we could do it in 1 trip. Before that, I was thinking if we killed 2 goats, we were going to have to shuttle. Yeah. But then once we loaded up and everybody did good under the loads that they had, I was like, we can do this in 1 trip, and that will, give us a chance of getting down early enough that we had enough daylight to get down the river too. Yeah. Hopeful. Which if we had to camp on the river, that'd be fine. We'd deal with it, but
yeah. So wake up to snow, all had breakfast. It was a cool morning. Obviously have to break camp. Everything's kind of wet, snowy. Load the packs, just super bulky, with a full goat cape, bunch of boned out meat, and then really camp, a cold weather camp plus 6 days of food. Like, it was a bulky, heavy load. Essentially the pack out ended up being a third absolutely terrible, a third kind of fun, and then a third, like, let's just get this thing over with. I'm tired and over it, and this pack, is heavy. That's how it went. So how was the first third for you, Jakey?
Oh man, that first third was absolute hell. Yeah, we all got our packs on, and it was immediately truck through some of the thickest alder patch. Just, it was miserable, because then I had my rifle, and I mean, you've got, I don't know how heavy my pack was, 80, 90 pounds, somewhere in there. I know you guys were all a little bit heavier. We were all in that 80 to 100 pounds, let's say. So we have that, and you're trying to duck under these branches, and it's like that one branch that gets hung up on your rifle, and you're just working. You finally get under it, and then another one hits, and you're just, I was mad. I was getting really frustrated, and he's behind me, and I'm cursing, just yelling, like, are you kidding me? And going through these, getting my shins whacked, and just trying to make it through, and we finally get out of that, and it was just steep, snowy. For the most part, it felt like just boulder patches too. So then I hated that. It's, here we go again with my fear of heights, like looking over. Thankfully, it was a little foggy too, so you really couldn't see much below. But at that point I was just so tired, and I was like, all right, let's just get it over with. Like, we've already been through this country before. Like, so it was definitely tough, just going through that part. But once we got through that all the alders and the boulder patches, and we started going down, it was pretty much smooth sailing. It wasn't smooth sailing, but it was easier than that first part. But yeah, man, I think all of us really hated that part. Yeah. We really didn't enjoy it. It was tough.
We didn't talk about it, but like, how did you feel about the first third? Only because you're trying to pick a route. You know what we have up against us, like the snow, the heavy packs, everything else. But I'm sure there's like just at times where you're looking in, like, we've got option terrible and option horrible, like, you know what I mean? And you're trying to get through all that.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was just trying to follow the track that we took up. Mm-hmm. And so constantly checking Onyx to see if we're on our track, just because it's shockingly easy to get off track going down. You start being like, oh, this looks good. Stuff looks different on the way down than it does on the way up. Like on the way up, it's like you see a route that you like and you take that, and on the way down, for some reason, something else looks better. Mm-hmm. So just taking a lot of time to take the phone out, check the route, and I always feel bad causing everybody to stop, because it sucks to stand around with that much weight on your back. Time-wise, I got concerned after the first third, because it was a lot slower than I had expected or hoped it would be. So that started making me concerned about daylight and how much time it was going to take to get down. Then you had a slip that was worse than expected. You hurt yourself a little bit there.
A little bit.
Yeah, I think probably.
And lost the length of your trekking pole, which was kind of a big deal.
Which was early on, yeah.
I think it probably went through everybody's head that with the snow conditions, the boulder fields, the alders, like at any point, like there's potential that somebody could break a leg, break a wrist. Like, it's just, you can't joke around.
Yeah.
You got to be very cautious, very diligent with every step.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was one spot where you're obviously in the lead at this point. You were behind him, Jake, and you went down something, and then Jake, I mean, you had to slide down. I mean, it was an 8-foot drop. I mean, it's longer than you were, obviously.
Yeah, 8 to 10 foot. And I remember I slid and I grabbed that alder. Are you talking about that one where I grabbed that branch and I'm hanging on? Because I could have kept going. I would have gotten stopped. Yeah. But it would have been kind of ugly.
Yeah.
Not fun.
I saw you do that, and then I saw your eyes kind of get big, like hoping he was going to stop. Mm-hmm. And then so I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking at other ways, you know, like, is that the only option or the best option? And so I'm looking at ways around it. And as I'm doing that, I take one step to my left. And without exaggeration, I took a step on snow and ended up, all of a sudden, my crotch hits the ground. And my right leg's on a boulder, I guess. I don't know. But I stepped in a hole where all the way up to my crotch, like my leg was just in a hole and still wasn't touching the ground. So now I'm like dangling with one leg in some sort of hole with a heavy pack on, can't get up. I mean, it was just like that stuff happens so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in those conditions.
Considerably hazardous. There's, several times on those steep places where we're extra prone to sliding. It was like intentionally go for an aldery route so you have something to grab onto and kind of rappel yourself down alders. But then since I had crampons on, I'd get down and like get in a position to brace. If the next person slid, I was gonna body check you into the mountain to stop you because I had the crampons on. So yeah, it was interesting. I think definitely hazardous.
And it was also intentional to slide. It like made more sense to slide down rather than try and, trekking poles. Yeah, it was just easier. It's like, feet won't get up. All right, let's just slide another 10 feet until we can get to that little flat spot or whatever to get the feet under ourselves.
At least that way you're not gonna like go headfirst and yard dart.
Yeah. Which is why I said that second third was kind of fun, because once I got in that cadence a little bit of like sliding, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. But even when it's unintentional, it was like, oh, that was fun. You know, I was joking, like, school's out, it's a snow day, like, this is adult recess, we're just sliding through the steep mountains with real heavy packs. Yeah. Then the last third, like, we kind of break out. We talked before about how when we made the climb in, you know, it's kind of exponential, steeper. So now we're reversing that, so it's getting a little less steep, and then we're coming out of the snow line, a bit easier going, less technical. But I think all of us at that point were just like the wear of everything we went through, and, you know, again, just tired legs, want to be done. Like, that last third wasn't the hardest part of the hike by any means, but it was difficult, I think, just kind of mentally, you know, like just feeling the toll of everything. I didn't enjoy the last third.
We were all pretty gassed and just wanting to get to the boat.
Yeah.
I do think there's definitely some importance of taking breaks.
Yeah.
Like, intentionally, even though we were kind of up against the clock, those little 5-minute breaks, like, heal up your body, it seems like.
Yeah.
And then you feel a little bit recharged. So for me, that's always a big thing. If it's nonstop and you're going the whole day, pretty much run out of gas. But so that definitely helped, taking a handful of little breaks.
Pretty good with that. Water, even going downhill, you still need to make sure you replenish with water and food, and it doesn't feel like you're working that hard, but at the same time you are, and just giving those breaks were helpful, which we did.
So it would be easy to say it's like, yay, we made it to the boat, it's over, but I
There's
know,
some hooting and
especially
hollering.
for you, like, you're responsible for getting us out there, navigating the river, dealing with the boat and equipment and safety, and like there's a lot going on. Like, I feel for you in that moment. So I know we all get back there, and I remember telling you, like, hey, like, we don't want to be in your way, but we want to be helpful. So I think we all kind of tried to start, like, all right, we need to get waders off, get waders on, pack up the boots, like, what's the best way to load the pack, just, you know, you're adding air to the boat, we're trying to load up the tarp, just like everything we can do, because we're against the clock for sure, just with daylight and not knowing what the river's like. So are we feeling good about it, or just like we got to cruise?
I was, at the end of the hike, I was like, okay, we're doing good on time. I had told myself, I think, 3 hours of shuttling. It took 3 hours on the way up, should be a little quicker going down. So I was like, if we make it by 3 o'clock, it was getting dark, shortly after 6, for navigating for sure. Wouldn't want to be later than that. So I was like, if we're there and boat's ready by 3, then we're in good shape. And I think we had a solid hour before that. So I felt really good about the time, but it was still like, we need to keep moving, and get things going. And then it was, when we did get to the boat, it was noticeable the water had dropped significantly. So we knew things were going to be tighter, just getting out from where we parked the boat, because we're kind of in a slough, like a back eddy, with still water. To get to the river, we had kind of a narrow spot to get through. So
yeah, you took me through first, and it was like, I see it, and I'm like seeing ground under the water, like just a few inches, and we had enough just to like
way skinnier
keep momentum. Yeah, and there's this
when we
big boulder. So we got through kind of uneventful.
Kind of, but you're like quick pointing it out, and I'm like, I think we're committed. Yeah. And it was just mud, so I knew we could scrape if we needed to, but it was narrower than the boat.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know, half the width of the boat.
Yeah.
So we would just scrape on both sides, and hopefully it wasn't too shallow that we'd just get grounded. But if we did, we can always drag the boat.
I've done that before with you.
Yes,
different hunt.
I've done that.
Yeah, so we make it through.
We scraped through and made it through unscathed.
You dropped me off, head back in, and then you were next, Jake.
Yeah, I was next.
And then, so you didn't know that little spot was there, but you had a little.
Well, yeah, he came. I got on the boat, and he's like, "Hey, don't panic. There's this rock there, and we're gonna have to make it through this. We'll be fine." And I was like, "Oh, boats don't freak me out. Like, I'm good with that. I like water's great. I don't get freaked out by that by any means." and we're going. Yeah, I mean, you're talking, you just have to make these little minute turns to make it through, and we hit it, gently.
I didn't hit it. I didn't hit the spot as well. I didn't make the turn, at the right speed or whatever. Didn't hit it just right like I did with you, and we smacked the boulder pretty good.
Yeah.
And jarred Jake pretty good, but fortunately the boat was unscathed, still held air, and we're able to keep going. So got him out.
Now he goes and gets the cameraman.
Yeah. Smooth sailing for us.
Yeah. Then I got it right with Justin again. So
Yeah, so we all three basically get out of that slough. So now we're on the river.
Back to our initial camp spot.
Yep, back to the initial camp spot from the first night. And then
I already had my pack in, so then Jake jumped in with his pack.
Yep. So Mark, you take Jake and Justin and some packs and gear down the river. I hang out. And when you get back to me, I forget, no specifics, but you're like, we had kind of like a dicey little spot with Justin. He kind of almost ejected. I'm like, oh, really? Yeah. Dang. Okay. But I hadn't heard, your guys' perspective. And when we were going down river, we come up to this bend and like make this turn. And in my head, I'm thinking, this is probably where whatever happened with Justin happened. And about the time you're like, this is where I almost ejected Justin. And then get down to you guys and hear your version of the story. So what's that?
I'll let you tell it, man.
You can tell it.
No, dude.
You had first view.
Yeah. Obviously.
We're just cruise down the river. Everything's great. And then we're coming in this corner, and there's just a bunch of debris, just stumps and exposed stuff, and it's tight. And it was like a left and then a right through here. And I remember like we were coming up on this big stump. I'm on the left side of the boat. Jake's to my right. And we come around the corner, and I'm like, he's not stopping. Like, he needs to turn or something. And about that second, we hit that stump on the corner of the front of the boat. And I've got my camera in one hand, not really holding the raft. I'm just kind of huddled down. It's pretty chilly. And we couldn't say anything. It was so fast it happened. But as soon as we hit, my first thought was, boom, the raft just exploded. Like, there's no more air. We're going to be dealing with this. What do we do now? But as that's happening, I get jolted out. Basically, I'm flying out of the boat, and somehow my knees, like my body goes completely straight, stiff. And I got one glove in the water, and my camera is up above trying to save it. It's got all the footage of the kill shots and, all the photos and stuff. And I feel Jake, and he's got my ankles, and I'm like still out of the boat, like in slow motion.
Yeah, it was insane. Like, obviously Mark is looking at everything that he's navigating through. There's so many different stumps and everything. There's even a boat in that section. There's a sunken boat there too. And so he's looking, and it was just one where it was just kind of hidden. And I think just us sitting in the front could have made it, hidden. And so, like Justin sees that, and he kind of like moves like this. So it kind of makes him off camber, off balance.
I didn't know what the raft was going to do. I didn't really sit down in it to brace it. I thought that we were going to pop, and then all hell was going to break loose. So I just kind of like got up and tried to move, and then it took my momentum and just kind of shot me over the top of the boat.
So it was I swear to goodness, it was a split second where all of a sudden he's like this, and then he's out of the boat, and all I could do was just grab his legs. And so I'm literally holding on to his calves and shins for dear life, and he's full on rigor mortis, just camera, up in the air, looking at the water, and his hand's in the water, and he's looking at me, and it was just me pulling him back up. It was
like slow motion trying to get me back into the boat. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. Are you okay? I'm sorry. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine.
One of my favorite parts when Jake was telling me the story for the first time was like, and he was real serious, he was like, Justin's core strength was incredible. All I had were his ankles, but his whole body was like a board.
Yeah,
I was holding everything I could.
Yeah, that was that woke us up for sure. It was like, whoa, like that just happened. It was just immediately. So everybody was fine. Everybody was okay. But man,
from my angle, it was, I guess, what happened going into that corner in hindsight is there was that first obstacle, which is what we hit. And I was like mid-decision of, am I going around the left side of that or the right side of that? Hadn't made a commitment yet. Mm-hmm. And then I was already looking at the next obstacle. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, because to decide on that one, it was like, if I go around the outside, can I make it the turn quick enough to get in through the next one and avoid the sweeper? Or do I have room to cut the inside corner and then still be able to weasel through the next obstacle and not get pushed in the sweeper? And I just never, it was just a lapse in judgment, I guess. I just never committed to one side or the other till it was too late, and we smacked that. And then I was like, instantly I was like, oh, I think Jake's got him. So, I mean, fortunately you pegged him and got him. And I was like, okay, that's okay. But I think we're going into this sweeper. I thought we were going to get pushed up onto that big sweeper. And somehow we brushed over another water brush and somehow kept moving forward and didn't get hung up and were able to keep going. And instantly I was like, I'm really sorry that happened. That shouldn't happen. I was like, it's okay. But I wish I had a GoPro because my view was incredible.
I wish
what just happened.
I wish I could rewatch that because that was pretty intense. But
I've never driven a boat really, and especially one where you're controlling the motor, steering the throttle and everything, and as much maneuvering as you have to do on that river with all the debris. I can't imagine the difficulty in that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And especially when you're loaded with weight, and different loads, it drives differently. And
weight and going downstream is tricky. You have to maintain speed to be able to maneuver. But it's a sobering reminder to me. Like, I had kind of built up a fair bit of confidence this season running some tricky water, and it gets fun. It is fun, but it's definitely sobering when you know, there was that boat that was in the water, and that was a really bad accident with a bad outcome. Things can go awry quickly if you're not like really keyed into what you're doing.
I'm really impressed with the strength, durability of that boat.
Yeah,
I thought for sure it was popping or we're going to blow a hole in the sidewall. It was pretty remarkable. Felt like we were hitting in a car and a guardrail, just wham!
Yeah. But when I got back to Mark, I checked the air pressure because I was like, I don't know if I was in my own head, but it felt like it was handling different when I went back to get him. So I was like, oh gosh, are we losing air in the floor? Yeah. But it held. And yeah, those do take some abuse. They're impressive boats. So, yeah.
Yeah. After that, it was smooth sailing.
It was smooth, yeah. I mean,
lots of tiling,
a lot of leapfrogging, and I mean, it's a lot of work because, like you were talking about, it's a very light boat, and then how you have it loaded is really important. So you're going from essentially like me and some gear to then essentially fully empty to go get them, and then you got, instead of one guy, now you got two guys in gear, which is a different load, and then you're back to empty. So you're like, your fuel cells here, your fuel cells there. You're constantly having to move the boat around to leapfrog.
I saw even you guys loaded up with rocks on that last one too.
Yeah.
Like when he dropped you off on.
Because we had less fuel and everything, so.
Yeah, had to add some counterbalance weight.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a lot of work doing the shuttling. So there was a thought at one time just to run, one or two guys all the way out. But I just didn't like the idea of getting that far separated, I guess, in case something went wrong, I prefer we're a little bit closer. So extra work of loading and unloading.
It was cold too. I remember asking him, I'm like, you cold? And he was like, yeah. And like, that's right when he threw on his puffy jacket, like moving us, shuttling us back and forth. Like we, all three of us at least got a break every once in a while out of the wind.
Yeah.
He's full on just hitting that wind. And I remember Justin and I, have our hoods, we're all tucked under our rain gear, just trying to cut that wind, like, and then trying to make a decision. Your eyes are getting watery too. Like, you have to be full on the whole time.
Yeah.
Definitely some adrenaline in those situations.
Yeah.
But yeah, the watery eyes was another thing that was getting me. Yep.
We made it. Made it with some time to spare. Got the boat loaded. Got in a warm truck. Dry ground. Heavy packs off. Like, it was cool.
Yeah, it was.
Jake had heard about a place we went to on my hunt to get a good meal and a good burger, and we got lucky. They were semi-open, so we had a heck of a celebratory meal after all that. And now hanging out here the day after. We completely threaded the needle on this hunt, like in terms of timing and weather. I don't know what it would look like if we were still out there today and getting out,
Yep.
Because essentially it was snowing when we left dinner. It snowed all night last night, all day today. And we're not on the mountain, like we're lower elevation and got more than I expected. So
so it would have been a ton of snow and temperatures dropping, water probably continuing to drop. So like you said, definitely had the exact weather window we needed.
Super fortunate.
Just squeaked it out.
Yeah. We still need to get our goats checked in at Fish and Game. We may get back out for some bonsai hunting, look at weather, see. So it's maybe not over yet. We'll see how it goes. But any final thoughts, recaps, takeaways, good, bad? We could get into anything that stands out, gear or wrap it, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think everything was pretty dialed. I think on these types of hunts, synthetics are the way to go. Like, I didn't have any issues, but I think it's just like that mind game that I had in my head. I had my down jacket and it did okay, but I just knew, like, we were in a situation where it was soaked. I would have wished I had a synthetic jacket instead, but gear-wise, I was all right. Boots held up. I was running the same boots as you were, the Hanwag Alberstones. Just a little bit of. I do have a little bit of a blister going on in my left heel, but that's just from my feet being wet. Shins took a beating.
That they did.
Yeah. Other than that, gear-wise, I was good. What about you?
I don't have anything on gear in a sense. Just this season and doing 3 trips to Alaska and being a hunter on 2 of them and filming all the trips. It's just been unreal. Obviously, I'm really excited to get to editing now and start putting out the content and showing everybody what we've experienced. I've learned so much in these 3 Alaska hunts this year, and super proud of Jakey for, basically being on the spot to, you're going, or, and taking that on. That's something, if you've never done an Alaska trip, it's a lot to take in and process, and I thought you did fantastic. Every single one of them had a different storyline, but basically it came down to working your tail off and staying committed, helping each other out, and couldn't ask for a better outcome. We filled literally every single tag that we other than a few predator tags, every tag that we wanted. It's pretty remarkable. So I alone got to experience 10 Alaska harvests, which is crazy. Phenomenal animals, views, the weather, the delays, just everything that you could want in a true experience, lifetime trip. Got it all. So I'm super fulfilled for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think I want to piggyback off of you. I just want to say, like, a big thank you to Steve for this opportunity. Being able to send me on this hunt, like, it's truly special, and I'm very thankful. And then also, thankful for you three helping me on this hunt. Just keep my mind right and being there. And it's really special when you get to share a hunt like this with, people that care about you and that you can trust on the mountain, because when you're out there by yourself, with 3 other guys, and knowing that you can rely on them, it's very helpful. So, I'm really thankful to spend that time and have those memories with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us again, man.
Thanks for coming back.
It was awesome.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah. And thanks for being, I mean, you guys are always optimistic, always super well prepared, which is, kind of a model hunter client. Preparation both physically, gear wise, and shooting, all really important things that not everybody does. So that was really cool. Thanks for coming back with me. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. Always fun on the mountain with you guys. Good job, Jake. Like, for real with the heights thing. It's a real thing. So.
I think it's like, even if somebody's not afraid of heights, one larger thing we talk about, it doesn't have to be Alaska, but we've in podcasts, whatever, have talked about just getting out of your comfort zone. And like years ago, we had a decal and it said, like, find your limit and then take another step. It doesn't have to be the biggest step, but like find where you're comfortable and then push past that a little bit, because that becomes like a new normal or a new like boundary line. But you can keep pushing that. It doesn't have to be in big ways, but if you just like kind of keep pushing little by little, you can do some wild stuff. So like, I know even at some point during the hunt, Jake, like, you were like, am I holding you guys up, or I'm sorry, or whatever. And it's like, instead of like thinking that, I'm not just saying this for you, but for everybody, but you already know, because I've told you, like, flip that and instead go, instead of thinking this as like a weakness or like I'm holding you guys up, think of it as like, I'm like pushing past that boundary, right? Like getting a little bit out of my comfort zone. And instead of thinking, oh crap, I'm afraid of the heights or like intimidated by this moment, think, I'm here doing this in spite of being like afraid of the heights or intimidated by this moment, So like, that's just such a mindset shift. And I know, like I told you at one point, we were, I think, hiking out or something, and I said it like kind of flippantly, not sarcastically, but flippantly. But even after I said it, the more I thought about it, I was like, man, that's true. Because I don't remember what you said, but I essentially said something to the effect of like, you get to choose your thoughts, so don't think crappy ones, or something like that.
Yeah, you said something about like taking in the view, and I was like, I can't look at it because it's making me sick or whatever, or something along those lines. And you're like, choose your own thoughts, man. Like, you said something along those lines as well. And I remember just kind of like hearing that, accepting it, looking at the view we had, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, this isn't so bad after all. So that really, really helped, and it allowed me to enjoy it rather than just kind of be so tense and stressed the whole way down the mountain.
Yeah. Cool. Well, guys, heck of a lot more to come. Justin, a lot of footage to go through. So
I'm excited. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
More films, stories. If you guys listening to this have questions, reach out, send us emails. We'll do more gear debriefs and all kinds of stuff. So all that is at theexperienceproject.com. Thanks for tuning in, listening in, following along.